Hi, welcome to Facilitation 101. We're going to do a brief course on specifically on how to get ready to facilitate. Going to talk mainly about what you as a facilitator are trying to do and how do you keep this to yourself and how do you keep it going. So this won't be as much about the slide templates as it is the bigger picture. What do you see? I think one of the things that we know today is everybody's a goldfish. Everybody has this really important thing that they're doing, that they're looking off to the side, and you can see they're not quite with you, and it makes it really hard. So, for example, if I asked you to pick out the goldfish that's farther away from the screen with the clocks going in the corner, can you do it? You might be able to. But probably you didn't even hear a word that I just said because you're so busy trying to look at the clocks and figure out what I mean by the clocks. And that's where we get into the real lessons for today. And we're going to break this down. Facilitation is a skill, just like any other skill, that's really about the live conversation, whether you're in person or whether you are recorded or whether you are doing a live webinar. It's really about the skill of balancing the visual and the audio. We don't want them to fight with each other. What we're trying to do is find that right balance that makes this a conversation. Where we're going to focus today mainly is on the in-person on-site version where you have your full body language, you have everything. And that's why I'm in the corner, because you are going to see the people that you're talking to, and they're going to see you, and that's an important part of it. It's the visual isn't just the slides, it's you as the speaker as well. And so what we're going to do is we're going to go through what I call my rules of three. We're going to start off with the initial rules of three, and this is design. And so each one of these groupings of rules of three, there's three of them, is going to come and we're going to break it down. I'm not going to use heavy visualization. I want you to listen to it and think about how this would apply to you. And when we think about design and we think about the idea of how would we design a webinar, how would we design an insight, whether it's a pack or a cab, or whether it's just a conversation, there's three things you have to take into consideration. Anytime we're doing this, and I'm bringing this from my experience doing live workshops with IT departments. One, we have to set the table. We want to set the limitations of the conversation. We do that with the market forces. We're going to give them a topic and we're going to ask them to walk with us through that. Now, where we're going to go after that is we want to give them our take. We want to set the conversation, and we want to set the conversation in such a way that we can have a great conversation, that we give them the opportunity to have some space to talk, to tell their story. And then lastly, we want to talk about the why OpenText. And for those thinking about this and thinking that that's backwards, that's actually the problem. When we talk about OpenText too soon, it becomes a sales conversation. And when we're doing facilitation on a webinar or a pack or a cab, the last thing we want them to feel is that they're being sold to, because then the blinders come on and they hold their cards close to the vest. What we're trying to do is open a conversation such that we can get in good information back. We're not going to try and sell them anything as part of this. That's the key change in mindset that you have to have. We don't want to use sales tips to do facilitation. We want to have this be an open conversation. We're trying to open up the gates to have a good conversation. So market forces. What's the big picture here? We want to stick to the facts. And really, when I say stick to the facts and make it factual, we want it to be something the audience knows. We want them to kind of feel that I'm in the right place. You're not yet trying to go, oh, this person really knows what they're talking about. You're trying to make sure, because again, they're in the room with you. You're trying to make sure that they go, okay, I'm comfortable here. This is something that I can be part of. Not, oh, I'm going to learn something new, because then they're going to be in listening mode. You want them to be part of the conversation. You want it to be something that your audience can feel that they can be part of the conversation. And that goes to the next 2 points. Be target persona based. What do I mean by that? I mean, if what you've come to talk about is records management for legal experts, don't bring HR examples, right? Be focused on what the topic is. I know you have other examples. I know you can do other stuff, But if we go too far outside what our audience is trying to do, again, the curtains come down and you're talking to the audience and expected to teach them rather than have them be part of the conversation. Be positive. Don't lose the audience by being Danny Downer. I know sometimes people buy into the Gartner methodology of FUD. Don't be FUD. That's not a good webinar. That's not a good workshop experience. That's not a good on-site experience. People just roll their eyes and they may listen to you or they may do something else. And so we want them to be engaged. The goal here with the market forces is to make them feel comfortable. They're part of it. They can be part of a conversation. Because what we're then going to do is we're going to give them either a point of emphasis or we're going to give them a point of contention, right? We want to give them a reason to stay. So we want them to look at you as the facilitator, as an interesting person that they're going to learn something with if they engage with. We want to plant a flag. We want to be interesting. So for example, with myself, my comment on developer and APIs is direct customers don't care about APIs. I think it's true. Maybe it isn't. But I can tell you that that's a strong position that people are going to want to know more about. And there's going to be people in the room that are going to say, you know what, you're absolutely wrong. I've been working on this and I'm using APIs for this and I work at Coca-Cola and blah, blah, blah. So you want to take one or two ways. So that's a contentious view. And I'm comfortable with that as a facilitator because in my back pocket, I have the data and the other parts that I'm comfortable kind of going, not necessarily toe to toe, but explaining my position, but I'm also going to give them some space to explain theirs. If that's not who you are as a facilitator, maybe be interesting in that you're going to show them something new. Tease them that you're going to show them something new. Your unique take might be, we're going to talk about things and do things that we've never done before. Want you to come on the journey. And make sure that you ground it in what they need as a persona, as a person. Again, going back to my initial example, legal tech, records management for legal tech. Let's not bring up HR policies. Let's not bring up the other parts. Let's not bring up why this helps HR, right? We're not going to go outside of legal. If we start off with the conversation with legal, let's not go outside of legal. We can do that later in the conversation, but let's make sure that at the beginning of the conversation when we're designing it, that we focus it down so everybody in the room feels that they're getting something out of it. And so last, when we talk about the design, again, we're still talking about the big picture. How are we designing this workshop, this CAB, this pack, this webinar, this breakout session? The end of it, where we're talking about why OpenText, and we need to be subtle. Maybe it's woven through the whole thing. Maybe the market force, your unique take, all leads to make it obvious. That's a really advanced way to build the conversation. I would recommend that unless you are a product expert and you've worked with customers, it's not the route you want to go. You want to keep the why OpenText towards the end. If they've come to a facilitation that you're doing as an OpenText employee, they already know that we're going to tell them that OpenText is the answer. So you don't have to go through it. Be subtle. Connect it to why your unique take. So as you're designing it, maybe you think about what you want the customer to do at the end of why OpenText. Your unique take should be a spin on that is driven in the market forces. And when I say keep it in character, remember this is a event that you are an active part of. You're part of the story. Don't go out of character. So for example, as you can tell, and for many of you that have met me, I'm a big talker. I use my hands. I will tell stories. That's in character for me. So when I do these, I don't go full OpenText. I don't turn into, corporate mantra speak, because that's not who I am as a person. And that's not what's going to connect with the audience when I'm giving it, because it'll come off as fake. Now, if that's where you're comfortable, that's where you should live. You do it the way that you're comfortable. That's going to give the audience the best examples, and that's going to give the audience the best opportunity to be part of it. So as we're designing it, we're talking about Why open text? Keep it in character. So if part of what you're comfortable talking about is in capture we call it the feeds and speeds. If you're most comfortable talking about the feeds and speeds, stay in character. Make that unique take, make that why open text, make that market forces relatable to what you're comfortable talking about. No matter what you think, that will lead to the best experience for the audience. So what am I doing here? So what I want to do is take a pause here and just talk about how I come up with the design. Give you a million-mile view. I'm just going to show you one slide. And so when I was doing the value-based marketing, one of the things that came to my mind as the market force was the fact that we can no longer talk about one side or the other. It's not, you could consider it a coin, but it's not a coin because it's a continuous circle. It's in Mayan myth, it's called the Ouroboros. And so I found this really unique drawing of two intertwined snakes as an Ouroboros. One is technical alignment, one is the business value. Now I chose this purposely, and I chose the one that had one that was a skeleton and one that was full bodied. Now, because the idea with the audience was that the business value is a skeleton on which we build our value-based marketing, and the technical alignment is the meat that we put on the bones. This was the right visualization for the conversation that I, as the facilitator, was going to have. It gave somebody something to think about, and from a psychology perspective, it gave them something unique that wasn't overly built, overly wrought, but it aligned with the story. So it's something that would stick in their mind that I could come back to and have them come up with this image. It's not that this is an important concept, the Ouroboros, and then having understand what that is. It's a simple visual piece that can come back over and over again into the conversation, so that when somebody goes down deep into the weeds on you on some topic that you didn't want brought into the conversation, you have a methodology and go, well, remember when we talked about the Ouroboros of intrigue? I want to pull it back to that and talk about how this leads to X. So you give them that visual that resets them into the conversation that you originally wanted to have. And that goes to our next rule of 3, which is scripting. So first rule of 3 is design, and we had our 3 points in that, which were market forces, unique design, and why open text. And the next rule of 3 is scripting. And that's really around your voice, conversation, and your timing. How do you meld these all 3 into these as your script? So your script isn't just what you write. It's how are you going to say it? It's the timing with your slides. It's all these things. And yeah, it can be exhausting to think that way, but it makes for a better experience. And it makes, at the end of the day, once you build that skill for yourself, it'll make it a lot easier for you. So voice. When we talk about scripting, when we talk about the voice, you want to generate energy for the topic. No matter where you start off with, and I come from an experience of, I've been giving presentations to audiences that think they knew better and sometimes did know better than me for 30 years, since I was 15. You've got to be the battery that generates the conversation, that generates the energy for the topic. Now, not everybody is comfortable generating that energy by the way they talk and talking loudly and projecting and being the center of being the center of attention. As you're probably aware, I kind of don't mind that. And so for me, I can generate that by talking loudly, by waving my hands, by saying something mildly outlandish that sometimes gets me in trouble and sometimes gets people to stop thinking of other stuff and brings them back to the conversation. And that's how we lead the conversation. Don't be part of the background. Now, there is a fine balance between leading a conversation, making sure that it goes in a direction that you've scripted and you want it to go, and being overbearing. We don't want to be overbearing. We want to, if people are having great conversations that align with where we wanted this session to go, whether it's a breakout session or a pack or cab, don't step in, but you do want to use your voice to lead the conversation, generate the energy for the topic. And you want to use your voice to lead the conversation in such a way that it invites some dissent. Now, we don't want to apologize. We don't want to have to be confrontational. These are our customers, but we do want them to feel like they have to say something, right? We do want to use our voice and project that confidence in what we're saying, so they feel like they need to come back with that same kind of energy and that same kind of confidence when they say, you know what, that's not what I see. We want them to feel they have to say something, but we want them to feel like they still can be respectful, that they're going to be respected, and that if they come back with us with the same energy, that we're going to take it the right way. And this goes into the conversation style, and these two are very tightly intertwined. Leave space. The pregnant pause is your friend. The idea that maybe you don't have the right answer for the moment, and allow somebody who might be thinking about, oh, am I going to say something, to jump in and say, you know what, I think X. And so when we're facilitating something where we're looking for the audience to participate, we want to use the visuals as conversational cues, not replacements. Don't put text on the screen. If it's going to be text, it should be 10 words, kind of maximum. In this case, I have a lot more than that, obviously, but they're broken down to bullets, and if you can tell, I'm using them to drive my conversation along. Now, obviously, I'm doing this for recording, so I'm not using pregnant pauses. I'm not using the kind of gaps where I let somebody tell me how wrong I am or how right I am, or agree with me, or ask a question on the nuance of something. What I'm doing is I'm using the visuals as a cue to ensure that you're coming along the conversation with me. And that's why you'll see and you'll hear me during this do things like tell a joke, give an anecdote, avoid the monotone. Even if it makes you feel like you sound unprofessional, from a workshop or a facilitation where we're trying to generate conversation, we don't want it to feel like we are the voice in the room. We want it to feel like we are one of them. So be human. Timing. This is one that is really, really hard. I obsess about the timing of my slides, my animation. How much time do I need on a slide to make a point? What slides are really good for that point in the conversation where I want to give a lot of space? How do I do it? Right? So I obsess about that. I obsess about that more than I do the visuals, and more than I do about how I'm going to talk. But again, that's a personal preference, and that comes from experience. I've been doing this for a long time. And for me, it just makes sense the way I do it. I semi-script things out. I like the bullet point script. I don't like to have a heavy script, because then I turn into a reader, and I know that's not a great experience for everybody. So we use the animations and the slides to designate the timing of things. So I like to use the delay on the timing and have them come up automatically. And that way, if I thought it through right, I'm going to end up kind of coming up with the right cadence, and everything's going to work well. The next one that's really important is don't give them the punchline. Say the punchline, don't show them the punchline. Your punchline, the core message when you're facilitating an on-site or a webinar, should never be on the screen while you're talking. Never, ever. Don't give it away. Make them have to listen. It's counterintuitive, because we think that if we give them that, they're going to, ooh, that's interesting. Why did they say that? They don't. They go, okay, I got time to do my email over here. Don't give them the opportunity to look down at their phone, look down at their computer, because you've lost them, and you won't get them back, and then they'll be lost in the conversation. And that goes to the last part. Maybe sometimes, many times, you won't be quite aligned. Your timing won't work. You've messed up something. You haven't read the room properly in the scripting perspective or in the design perspective. And so you end up with this time where you've just got to change it up. Now, for those of you in the audience who haven't done a lot of public speaking and haven't done a lot of facilitation, maybe this last one is more of a masterclass skill. But sometimes you change it up just by telling a story. You have something on the screen, you go, this one time And I love to start stories off saying this one time, and you give them the context of why your knowledge is important, why they should come back to the conversation and listen to you. So sticking with this records management for legal, this one time I was working with a county in Northern Ontario, and the and counsel for that county came up with some really tight legal requirements. Now, if I pause there, everybody who was kind of paying attention but thought that I had gone too far into the technical side, I go, oh, he's going to talk about requirements now. I'm back. So you can use those pauses. You can be willing to change it up to get people back into the conversation that you want to have. So again, similar, I wanted to take a pause here. This slide is purposely overwhelming. So to give you some context, with it, in this facility, in the workshop that I was doing here, the idea was that today is not like yesterday. I had a simplified version that only had 3 objects, which again, if you're following along on your scorecard at home, I like 3s. And then I threw this up because it is overwhelming. It doesn't make any sense. It's not a real equation. It's meant to not make sense to you. It's purposeful. Because now, if you weren't paying attention, you turn back to the slide and you're, what's he on about? And then I focus your attention. So now I've used the timing of the slide. I've used the execution of how I'm talking about the slide from where I was before to where I am now. I'm using this to focus your attention. That what we're trying to do and what we're going to talk about for the rest of this is about this one little area. You don't have to be overwhelmed and not listening, because we're really going to focus on this. But the context is there's a lot going on and we need everybody to focus it. So how do we do this? And that's the context that we do. That's how we can use the visualizations, even if they're kind of not awesome visualizations. And I am not the best visual person, but I create slides that allow me to talk through and provide insight through my voice that aligns to the slide. And it's a great, once you get there, and if you're really good with your visualizations, you can knock out home runs, in your sleep. Rule number 3 of the 3. So we've gone through design, scripting. Now we're going to talk about execution. And before I go any further, I want to, as you look at the slides, when you get the slides, take a look at what I've done with each one of these. Have you noticed that the circles are always different on the 3? What I've done is subtle, and what I would do, if I had the metrics around it, is the circles in my mind for each one of these 3 big rules of 3 gives you that idea of the balance. So in the first one, market forces was huge because that's where we start off. That's your most important part. The second one, you'll see that they're shaped differently and interlocked differently. This one's linear because when we talk about the execution, there's an order which makes the most sense to do it and to design it and to think about it. And that's your visuals, your timing, your movement. This is how we execute. This is how we think through how we're going to do it. And so when we think about the visuals, again, a lot of this is going to be repetitive. You're using the visual as conversation cues. The visuals don't replace. The visuals shouldn't need explaining. We should need explaining. Caught myself there. Should need explaining. Don't replace yourself. We have a habit at OpenText of doing this. We have visuals that explain everything with every title on it so that somebody could do it by themselves. That's not what we want to do when we're facilitating. That's great for our internal presentations where people aren't going to be part of the meeting, but for something where we're facilitating and we want this to be a live event, we want them to have to listen. We want them to have to be engaged to get something out of it. So don't replace yourself as part of the value of the conversation. Know your audience. This is one of the ones that's really hard to do, especially if you don't have a lot of experience talking to the kind of person that you know is going to be in the audience. You don't want to talk down to them. You don't want to confuse them. And confusing them can be about you're talking a level up, or you, again, going back to some of the strands that I've webbed together now. if we denote this as for legal tech or for somebody, some specific industry, don't bring other industry examples into it. It makes no sense to them. You've confused them because, like, so are you saying HR is the most important thing that legal is going to do? It might be good for at the beginning because it gives you a point of dissension, but don't thread that through it. Don't have your visuals be about HR. If we know we're talking to local government or somebody else, use local government examples. It's that simple. You go outside of that, you're going to have a real hard time keeping the audience intrigued and involved. The timing. Visuals are cues. There's a couple of different ways that you use them. I have a real simple rule for the timing. Anything that is part of the same conversation I have on one slide and I animate through, I bring it up, I bring it to appear as I'm talking. Anything that restarts the conversation, totally new slide, even if I'm using the same visualization. Like this slide I could use for timing the other part of the conversation. Excuse me. But I would keep it the exact same, but I would take that slide and do a transition so that everybody knows to reset their attention to me, because we're changing the topic. And if they don't reset their attention to me, they're not going to be part of the conversation. And hopefully I've intrigued them enough that they want to be part of the conversation. They've given us their time on site. They want to be part of the conversation. So you want to give them the opportunity when they've drifted away to come back. Build the suspense. Take pauses that seem a little weird. We're trying to create space for people to be involved. We don't want to have to talk the whole time. For some of us, that's just not a skill we have. For some of us, it's exhausting to have to hold the conversation, and they don't get the best out of it, and you don't get anything in return. You want to keep that up. Again, that timing is part of how you keep re-engage them, how the visuals re-engage the audience. Movement. So this one's kind of specific to on-site, in person. Be a cheerleader. Look around the audience. Make eye contact. Talk to people. I know it's hard. It can sometimes be hard when you're on site and you don't maybe know the people in the room. Find somebody to pick on in a positive and friendly way, but find somebody to pick on. Maybe ask somebody. Some keener who sat in the front row probably really wants to be asked. Like they're sitting there hoping that you ask them. Like that's why they sat in the front row. Take advantage of that to start the conversation, to break the ice. As you can see, I'm a face and hand talker. For me, that's great. It means that I change my facial expression. I move my hands a lot. I'm exhausting to watch if you're not listening to me, or if I'm talking about a topic that you don't like, because everything's moving. I'm a little frenetic and kinetic. And in webinars, I do that by being ridiculous with my face. Like my face is extra expressive. And you can see, hopefully you can see it. I make sure that I pause and I throw a bigger smile than I would normally. Don't break character. So I'm a hand talker. Even though you can't see my hands, you can probably see that my shoulders move all the time. If you're a hand talker, be a hand talker. Don't apologize for who you are in these. Don't sit with your hands, because that causes you to change the psychology of how you talk. It means that you're not being yourself, and you start to ball in. And people can see when you're doing that. And it changes the nature of how they interact with you. So be yourself. If you're a hand talker, be a hand talker. And that brings us towards the end. And the most important part of facilitating is be you. Be the person that got you there. Don't be afraid to show people that you know something. Don't be afraid to push back on our customers just because they're our customers. They're there because they want to be pushed back. They want to learn something new and interesting, or even just a different way of thinking about it. So be the person that brings that to them. Here's some of the resources that you could use. For me, there's two people that I think I have the world of respect for as far as visual design, whether it's a slide, an infographic, or anything. That's Edward Tufte, who has a couple books, really good. He uses old school examples and how they tell the story without anybody being there. And Guy Kawasaki. I would look those guys up. Scripting, when we talk about the story, because again, we're trying to be part of the sales cycle, but maybe not the sale, maybe not the sellers. Obviously, Awesome by April Dunford, really good book. It brought some new thinking to me in the last kind of year. And Jeffrey Moore's Crossing the Chasm. I think those are great books to understand how to talk to people in a business sense and to have that confidence that you're doing the right thing. On execution, my favorite TED talk is Angela Lee Duckworth, only because of the way she talks about the subject matter. Amy Cuddy is another one who's really good, particularly if you're on the younger side of myself and you're looking for somebody who can tell you how to exude confidence without maybe not being there yet. Simon Sinek is, it kind of goes without saying he's got to be on the list. But on the TED Talk site, there's a Why We Tell Stories playlist that has a diverse cast of people that come from different areas and they tell stories, and they're really good. Jason Thompson is really practical and pragmatic. I really like hearing his stories. He uses personal anecdotes to tell the stories. For myself, when it comes to confidence and it comes to how to tell a business story where we're trying to connect the dots, there's two books that I've really enjoyed. One book that I've really enjoyed, and one TV series I've really enjoyed. The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Bleep. I like it for the there's some parts that aren't for me, and there's some parts that are, and I think it does a really good job of talking about the how to generate your internal confidence in such a way that you can be part of a conversation. And there's a series out there by James Burke. It's from the 80s. It's from BBC. You can still find it on YouTube, called Connections. He does a great job of taking a bunch of random topics and areas and connecting the dots in a way that made you think, oh, that's so natural. His presentation style is very buttoned up, but at the same time, he gets the job done, and you end up interested at the end of it. And with that, I'll say thank you. I hope you enjoyed this. As always, please reach out if you need anything, and I hope this helps.